Well, that's gotta be one of the worst console showcases I've ever seen. It's been a while since I made like a gaming's dying style video, and I don't really talk about Nintendo a lot on this channel. Believe it or not, I used to be a huge fan. I grew up with a GameCube and a Wii, and man, I'm just one of those people who really loved my GameCube, not as much as my PS2, of course, but Nintendo had such great exclusives back then. Super Smash Bros. Melee, Super Mario Sunshine, Luigi's Mansion, Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, which is probably still the best Pokemon game to this day, Kirby Air Ride, the most underrated party game that has ever existed. Oh, and how could I forget one of my favorite games of all time, Metroid Prime? And this is all without getting into third-party exclusives at the time, like the Resident Evil 1 remake, or even Resident Evil 4 for about a year. And the list goes on. There were so many great games I played on my GameCube. And yeah, I ended up liking my Wii as well. Yeah, the whole motion controls gimmick has aged like milk, and the exclusive game selection definitely wasn't quite as strong, though I think Super Mario Galaxy is still one of the most visually impressive games that has ever released to this day, and it will forever stand the test of time, proving that aesthetics are far more important than graphic fidelity. Oh, and of course, it also has one of the greatest original soundtracks in gaming history as well. And then, of course, we got the Wii U, which was the biggest Nintendo bomb since the Virtual Boy, and I'm not going to get into that, but I will say I think people didn't quite give the Wii U a fair shot. The whole consumer confusion, whether or not it was even a new console, kind of just speaks to how dumb the average person is. But I will admit that the gamepad was probably an even dumber gimmick than motion controls. And then finally we got to the Switch, which I have always thought was overrated since fucking day one. Now yes, I think Breath of the Wild is an amazing game. Honestly, I do. I don't know if I would think that on a second playthrough, because I think you guys already know by now how I feel about open world games. But the first time playing it, it really felt like I was playing a very well-polished, huge sandbox where there was constantly new exciting things to discover. Yes, some of the shrines sucked absolute dick, but I'd say for the most part, world exploration was actually kind of exciting. Now, personally, I hate Super Mario Odyssey, but I'm not going to get into that right now. I'll just say that Joseph Anderson's review pretty much covered every single problem I had with the game. It truly took baby game to a new level. I don't understand why we need to even further infantilize games that were already designed for children. Nobody ever had a problem beating Super Mario 64. Why the hell is Super Mario Odyssey so fucking condescending, and how frequently and often it rewards the player for doing literally nothing of value? And look, I'm not going to give you a brief history lesson on the past 7 years of the Nintendo Switch, but let's just say that I wasn't truly impressed by any game on the console except Breath of the Wild. Yes, there were quite a few good games I played. I really liked Metroid Dread. I thought Shin Megami Tensei 5 was good. Although Pikmin 4 wasn't exactly what I wanted, I still liked it as well. But if I had to sum up the Switch's library, I would say a third of it was just sequels to long-running franchises that didn't really impress or innovate in any significant way. Another third was literal re-releases and ports, either from the Wii U or of current-gen console games, which I have no idea why the hell you'd want to play significantly graphically downgraded games that probably run like shit just because you can do it on the go. And the last third I'm simply going to refer to as weeb games, which is completely fine. I don't care if you really like anime games, at least they have attractive women in them. But I won't say that most of those appealed to me personally. So yeah, obviously I'm not crazy. I can definitely acknowledge that the Switch has a better library than, say, the PS5 or the Xbox One X, but the bar is so goddamn low at this point. The Switch definitely did not impress me. Actually, I was pretty fucking disappointed. If you think about it, Nintendo completely canceled their handheld line, and all of those development studios that normally made these like bite-sized budget fun games. I grew up with a shit ton of great ones. All of those studios then were supposed to make games for the Switch, right? So you'd think we'd get like twice as many games, since now all the console exclusives and the handheld exclusives are combined onto one system, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. Now, I know a lot of this is just due to the fact that games take a lot longer to make now, and I'm not going to get into that because this video has nothing to do with that shit. But no, I don't think the Switch has even as robust a library as the Wii, certainly not like the Nintendo DS. And just because maybe those games have higher budgets and better production values than Wii or DS games, doesn't mean they're actually better games. They absolutely are not. Honestly, I think the only Switch title that will be considered one of the greatest games ever made in the long run is probably Breath of the Wild. And if you name anything else, that just says to me that you haven't played enough video games, that you didn't actually grow up with the Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, because I guarantee you there's an equivalent game from 20 years ago better than anything you could name. I don't care that Smash Bros has 100 characters. I don't care that Mario Odyssey lets you turn into random ass, like, enemies and use their ability for some fucking stupid gimmick. I don't care that Tears of the Kingdom added a bunch of stupid ass Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts mechanics. None of that stuff actually fundamentally improves the game. Well, I guess you could make a case for Smash Bros. Being better, but either way, it's not exactly one of my favorite series anymore. So you may be wondering, why am I starting off with this huge introduction when this is supposed to be a video about the reveal of the Switch 2? Well, essentially this whole thing is just a setup to show you that I wasn't exactly impressed by the Switch 1. And so Nintendo is now having their huge Disney moment. And what I mean by that is they're trying to milk the customer for everything they're worth. They've got our childhoods by the balls. They know that we're attached to their core IPs. And for the most part, they're no longer interested in making new ones. They know the type of power they have over millennials, and now they're going to test just how willing the customer is to empty their pockets. Nintendo truly is the Disney of video games. The difference is, unlike Disney, Nintendo hasn't made their political propaganda so blatant just yet. Now, if you know where to look, you could certainly see it in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. That was some of the most obvious cases of DEI I've ever seen, and the Pokemon Company literally has a DEI page on their website before one of you morons says something stupid. But for the most part, they have stayed out of modern cultural Marxism, wokeness, whatever you want to call it. But Nintendo has truly jumped the shark with the Switch 2. I don't want to repeat the opinions of what many other YouTubers have already said, but just know, obviously I agree with them that these prices are absolutely fucking ridiculous. But for me, it's not necessarily about the number itself. I don't think a $450 console is that insane, even though Nintendo has been known for being the affordable option until recently. And I'm more mad about the price hike of physical and digital games, more because of what it represents instead of the actual number itself. Games just got standardized to $70 like, what, 5 years ago? And now Nintendo seriously expects us to pay $80 for digital, $90 for physical. Well, a small important correction here, as it turns out the whole $90 for physical thing technically is not confirmed. It's based on a price conversion from Spain, so honestly there's a pretty good chance that part isn't actually true. But regardless, at bare minimum, the standard price of video games is going up another $10. Physical has basically been borderline dead for about a decade now, and I think this is pretty much going to kill physical games for good. Why the hell would you pay $10 extra for a tiny little case on your shelf? Yeah, sure, some people will do that, but given that you're paying $20 more than the standard price of a video game, yeah, I think people are just going to stick with digital. Another thing that people are bringing up is the fact that Nintendo games very rarely go on sale, at least the first-party ones. So it's going to be sticking to that price for a long time. You can't just be a patient gamer, wait a year, and then pick up Donkey Kong for $20. No, that's just not going to happen. But again, like I said, it's not necessarily about the money. I have the money. I can afford to buy these games and the consoles, no problem. And I will, because I'm a game reviewer. Even though I probably won't make videos on a lot of these games, because most of the people who come to this channel don't come to see Nintendo games. Even though I do love baby games, as people like to call them. Hell, the Croc Remaster is utter dog shit, and yet I was having a great time playing it. So I'm sure I'll really like Donkey Kong Bonanza. But like I said, it's more about what this represents. If Nintendo gets away with this, that means the standard price of video games for everyone is going to go up to $80 or $90. Let's say hypothetically it doesn't, because Sony and Microsoft don't think they can sell games for that price. Has Nintendo proved to you, to anyone, that their games are worth $90? as I was just talking about a couple minutes ago, they certainly haven't proved it to me. I definitely was not that impressed with most of the Switch's exclusives. And just judging by the gameplay footage they showed in the presentation, the new Switch games don't really look any better than the Switch 1 games. I mean, what are they using the new power of this console for exactly? And it's not like the Switch 2 really has any interesting gimmicks except maybe being able to use a Joy-Con as a mouse. That's something I would actually use. But nothing else I really gave a shit about. What, you gotta buy a special Nintendo camera peripheral and then use their discount Discord app? Which of course requires the Nintendo Online service that you gotta pay every year for just to use. And this is Nintendo we're talking about, so you're probably gonna get banned for saying slurs. Likely using AI in some fashion to detect your speech. Not to mention the elephant in the room of all of the grooming that no doubt is going to go on. I wouldn't be shocked if this turns out to be the Omegle of Nintendo and people just start flashing their genitals at children. You know the type of people Nintendo fans are. Don't even pretend for a fucking second that I'm pulling this idea out my ass. Honestly, this just seems like a horrible idea. I mean, this shit is a fucking joke. They even showed in the enhanced version of Mario Party that it had, like, Connect functionality with the stupid-ass camera. So now, Nintendo's copying off of Microsoft, which copied off of them. Not to mention, another thing with the physical games is that some of these carts don't even have the fucking game on them. So you're paying $10 extra for some worthless plastic, which then you just insert the card in your Switch and then have to download it online anyway. This whole thing is just fucking ridiculous, man. And I've heard some people give some kind of weird excuses for the prices, saying like, well, realistically, things like free gacha games are way more expensive because over the course of years, you'll probably spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars if you're a whale, so that you can jerk off to your favorite slut's ass on screen. Which again, my counter argument is, gacha games are not fucking video games. I don't really care what these Coomers do with their free time, it's not exactly the same market. Another excuse is that if you adjust old game prices for inflation, video games should actually cost like $100 or more now. But that never takes into account if the wages have inflated at the same rate, which they haven't. People are fucking poorer than ever. And again, you guys know I'm not a socialist or a communist or whatever the hell. But it doesn't matter if games should cost $120 or whatever ridiculous number. The only thing that matters is the value proposition to the customer. Yes, you can deceive people into spending more money with microtransactions or shitty copy-paste DLC. The type of stuff we've been seeing since the PS3 era. But ultimately, they still have to convince you to buy the game. I would unironically pay $100 for a masterpiece, because a game that is truly a 10 out of 10 is extremely rare these days, no matter what journalists or shill YouTubers tell you. I don't think I've played a single new game release that I'd consider a masterpiece in the entire time that I've been making videos on this channel. So over 5 years. So yes, with Nintendo games, typically you just pay one time and then you enjoy the game, which is better than most other AAA releases if we're being honest. But this shit is still scummy no matter which way you try to spin it. Another good example is that they're fucking selling you a tech demo that teaches you the features of the Switch 2. Yes, it costs money. This is something that would have been free software on the Wii. And even if we just take the presentation itself at face value, the show was fucking ass. Half of it was literally just ports or slight upgrades on older games that they can sell to you again. Though I guess you pay less money if you get the upgrade. Oh, and did you guys notice that they slipped in that the Switch 2 isn't entirely backwards compatible? It's only select games, not that we know what the full selection is. And to touch on the wokeness subject again, they're fucking developing a wheelchair basketball game. Are you fucking kidding me? This had its own trailer during the show. So what does that leave us with that's actually exciting from the Switch 2 reveal? Well, we have Mario Kart World, which I have to admit does look pretty damn good, even though I'm not a fan of sandboxes in general. The way that it looks like it's being handled in this game is really interesting. There's Donkey Kong Bonanza, which again, I have to admit, does look good. It looks fun. I love when you can destroy environments in video games. Though I hate the new Donkey Kong design, and I know I'm far from the only one. I just can't stop thinking of Seth Rogen's obnoxious laugh, and I just hate how friendly he looks now. The Rare design was perfect. Now he just looks like a harmless goofball. Of course, there's Metroid Prime 4, but that's also on the Switch 1, so you don't need to buy a Switch 2 for that. And I'll be honest, it really doesn't look that great. Metroid Prime 1 is in my top 10 favorite games of all time, but the Metroid Prime 4 footage just didn't show anything interesting at all. The psychic gimmick doesn't really look fun. It was just used to open doors and shoot a homing shot. Oh wow, do we even know if we can switch beam types in this one? Because that was my biggest problem with Prime 3, that they got rid of the whole switching guns feature, which made Prime unique in the first place. And of course, the final interesting game they showed, which I, sort of implied that I was interested in at the beginning, is Kirby Air Riders. Guys, Kirby Air Ride 2 was in my list of games that are never getting a fucking sequel in a million years. So honestly, I am a little excited. I never thought I could get excited for another game release, but yeah, I'll be honest, I am. I actually really wanted that game to get made. Now, obviously, I'm not that excited because Dragon's Dogma was another game I thought would never get a sequel, and well, you saw how mediocre that sequel was last year. But between this game and Okami 2, at least there's a couple things I'm looking forward to in the future. The thing is, out of these 4 games, only one is actually releasing on launch day. That being Mario Kart World, which is also bundled with the console. Donkey Kong Bonanza is coming out just a month later, so at least it's a launch window title. But Metroid Prime 4 still doesn't even have a fucking official release date. I can only assume it's coming out at the end of this year, unless it gets delayed yet again. And as a game that was trapped in development hell for like 7 fucking years, because you might remember it was revealed with the Switch 1, I don't exactly have high hopes that it's going to be as good as Prime 1 or 2. And supposedly Kirby Air Riders is also coming out this year, but we didn't see any gameplay, so I wouldn't be surprised if it gets delayed. And some of you might be thinking, well, I'm forgetting a game. That being the From Software game Dusk Blood, which has to be the worst title they've come up with yet. It reminds me of Dustborn. And look, I was as hyped as everyone else when I thought this was going to be the unofficial Bloodborne 2, but as it turns out, it is a PvPvE game. Like Hunt Showdown or something to that effect. Yeah, I'm fucking out, dude. I don't care. From Software had their last hurrah with Elden Ring and Armored Core 6, and it looks like now their golden years are finally done, and they're gonna sink into the abyss. That is just my prediction for the future based on Elden Ring Night Rain, and I'm sure as soon as influencers get to touch this, we're gonna hear similarly worrying feedback. I don't think anyone buys From Software games for a shitty forced online experience. We play because they're awesome single-player games. Or at least they used to be. I'm kind of sick of them now, but they're still high quality at the end of the day. I can admit that. And another thing, too, that I'm sure like 5 people are excited about is that they're adding GameCube games to the Switch Online Plus service or whatever the hell. Have none of you people ever heard of Dolphin? I guarantee it's gonna fucking run better than Nintendo's own emulator. And it's for free, no less. You have to pay like $50 a year just to play a few GameCube games on Switch 2. So yes, I realize I'm rambling a bit here, and there's plenty of other things I could cover, like the fact that the Switch 2 only comes with 256 gigabytes of storage, which is pitifully small in this day and age, especially when you're going to have to probably download half your games anyway. But I think I more or less covered everything important. I just wanted to quickly get my thoughts out here on this. Don't buy a Switch 2 at launch. Just don't do it. Because if you do, you're sending Nintendo a message that it's okay to crank up the price of video games even further. And yes, there's probably some people who want me to bring up Trump's tariffs. That $450 price tag applies to everyone, at least, adjusted for your local currency. Or at least that's what I thought until I figured out that apparently it's cheaper in Japan for some reason by a significant amount. And yes, because of Trump's tariffs, pre-orders have been canceled in the United States, so it's very possible that the Switch 2 could be even more expensive here. Which I'm not going to get into real politics here, just know that I find it hilarious that every Redditor is now an armchair economist just because they hate Trump. Either way, video games are a luxury, not a necessity, and I don't think the Switch 2 itself, by any stretch, is a necessity, which was kind of the whole point of this video. You shouldn't buy it anyway because there's no fucking point in buying a modern console at launch. Oh boy, you get like 2 games. And then what are you going to do with it? It's just going to collect dust on your shelf, probably like your Switch 1 or your Xbox One X or your fucking PS5. And look, I'm not going to get into a PC master race rant at the end of this video, but just know that I absolutely do about 99% of my gaming on PC these days. Another thing to consider is the emulation angle. Now, yes, Nintendo has been cracking down hard on the emulation scene, at least with the Switch. Rest in peace, Ryujinx. But I guarantee people will find a way to not have to pay money for these games. This is one of those times where the consumer absolutely needs to vote with their wallet. Nintendo has to be taught a lesson. They cannot get away with this because it's going to ruin the rest of the video game industry. Even if you personally don't give a flying fuck about Nintendo, you need to try and convince other people not to buy this thing, just so that every other game publisher doesn't want to charge $90 for their games. This is absolutely just ridiculous. I know the people defending Nintendo are kind of just being contrarians. This is one of those times where I kind of side with the left, but, you know, for slightly different reasons, because I'm not a communist. Regardless, you just have to ask yourself if it's worth the money. And the answer is no. If you say anything other than no, then you are a mindless consumer NPC, and there's no hope for you. Just don't buy the Switch 2. That's all you gotta do. Alright, that's about it. See you next time, guys.